I'm Simon Jacob, your host for this episode from Jerusalem. Before we get started, I ask that wherever you are, please take a moment and pray for the safety of our soldiers and the safe return of all of our hostages. I feel extremely privileged to present the following interview with Joseph Herzog, the Vice President and partner overseeing everything in the Herzog family's California operations. His responsibilities include all of their vineyard partnerships, their modern state-of-the-art Oxnard winery facility, its tasting room, and its world-class fine dining restaurant terroir. Joseph leads an incredibly busy lifestyle, traveling throughout California, viewing vineyards firsthand and constantly updating business plans and schedules with a corporate sales and marketing team in Bayonne, New Jersey. I actually caught up with him on the East Coast on one of these planning sessions where I was very appreciative that he allocated me some of his tightly scheduled time. This episode is a rare look into the inner workings of what is a true dynasty of the kosher wine business. If you're in your car, please focus your attention on the road ahead. If you're home, please sit back, relax, open a bottle of delicious kosher wine, and enjoy. Without further introduction, I present a conversation with Joseph Herzog. I have a few questions, if you've got a few moments.
Please, thank you. An honor and a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on. I know you're in your 9th generation currently in Herzog, but what does it feel like to be an 8th generation member in the Herzog wine family?
It's like I said, it's an honor and it's a privilege. But with the honor and the privilege is responsibility. To explain it, I once somebody, I had a city official in my office and asked me the question, says, how does it feel? And I always say the story, I have on my desk, I have a bottle of wine that my father made, going back with my father's signature on the bottle from 1985. And I took that bottle in my hand and I showed it to the person and I said, look, this is the bottle of wine that my father made before me. And now I'm sitting here and I'm working for the family and the responsibility from the family to deliver as the 8th generation, deliver for the Herzog name and the Herzog quality. And what I see every day on my desk is a chain link. And it's me in the bottom of the chain. And I have to make sure not to let go of that chain and continue that chain. So that's really it's interesting because employees ask me when I interview employees, I kind of answered the same thing. I said, the honor is that there's all these thousands and thousands, or I could say millions of people that rely on Herzog drinking those wines for every special occasion, whether it's a Shabbos, or it's a Yom Tov, or it's a wedding, any special monumental occasion, they use that bottle of wine. So that's the honor. The scary part of it is we have to make sure we deliver from a kosher standpoint of view, that the people rely on us, and then on a quality standpoint of view, that it lives up for the occasions for what they're using it for.
Incredible history. How did you start in the wine business? I mean, I know you were in the family, but how did you get started in it?
That's actually interesting and a long story. We'll see how much detail we have time to get into that. But the family actually has rules. People think the Herzog family just family. There's actually a lot of rules and regulations in the family business, and that's, thank God, part of the success story of our family business. And I was not supposed to be in the wine business. I was actually, my second hobby is real estate development. I was actually working in the winery upstate New York just until when I came back from yeshiva out of Kollel, came back to the States. And the having an amazing family that we have, that gave me the opportunity to do something until I find, as a launching board, until I find where I go next. Baruch Hashem, for that short term that I was in the business, I was able to add and to prove myself. But it came after 9 months of working for the family that I had partnership and purchased a piece of land, and I was going into the development industry. And the family told me at that point, when I gave notice, how about we're building a winery in California? How about the opportunity of having you go out and run the winery in California? And that's
Wow.
where it started. So actually, I came out with my wife in that February. We came out to look at the winery was still in the middle of being built. But I came to look at a community. I came to look at a whole new something. I always say it wasn't even a nightmare for me to end up in California. But I ended up, I came, I saw the place, I saw the people, I saw the opportunity, and it was opportunity that I couldn't pass on. So my
Wow.
wife, my amazing wife and family, encouragement of family from her family, my family, and we took the plunge and we moved out to California. And actually, interesting enough, now June was 18 years since I moved out to California.
Wow. I've been to the winery in Monroe, and I've toured through it.
Right.
And
In Marlboro, New York.
I'm sorry, in Marlboro, not in Monroe. It's in Marlboro. I've toured through it, and I've also toured through Oxnard. And Oxnard is like light years ahead. It's like such an incredible step forward. It's amazing. What gave you the inspiration to go from New York to Oxnard? How did you create such an incredible winery there?
So it's actually, it's not, you're touching on a bigger picture. You're touching on it's more of a family vision versus Joseph Herzog. I wish I could take all the credit, but I can't. It's actually more of a family decision. And the way I look at it is the Herzog family producing wine, coming from Europe and producing wine in Europe and ending up in New York. I think I might segue for a second in terms of speaking
History.
about Kedem wine and what people think, or what we call the baggage in the kosher wine industry, what people know the kosher wine as being the sweet, syrupy, or sacramental wine. And it's not really by design, or that's what kosher wine, or that was the setup, but that was the strategy. It's just the people coming from Europe, the immigrants coming from Europe to the United States, ended up, the majority of Jews just simply ended up in the East Coast. We all know that in order to make great wine, you got to grow great grapes. Now, New York State is not known as necessarily the great grapes, right? And the majority of what grows in New York is Concords.
Yep.
Now, nobody has ever mastered or tried to master making an exceptional wine coming out of Concord grapes. So we were basically dealt, my family, my grandfather, my father, and uncles were basically dealt coming from the wine industry, coming to the United States and landing in New York, going into the industry and producing wine. You got to be realistic. What were the grapes that were at hand? It was Concord, Catawbas, Niagaras, all these French hybrid varieties. Now, in order to make a New York State wine drinkable, and part of it is also, let me just go back for a second. One of the main things in order to make great wine is having ripe grapes. In order to have ripe grapes, you need to have a good summer. Being in Israel, being in California, we all know what a good summer is, that we have a lot of heat, no rain, so that things could actually get ripened. So in New York, we all know with the amount of rain that we get, you're going to get a lot of big clusters, big grapes, but you're not going to get the sugar. You're not going to get the ripening of what you need for the sugar level, the pH, the TA, all that in those New York State grapes. So in order to make a New York, so if you have to make wine out of New York State grapes and take those grapes, you're going to have to do some modification in order to be able to make a wine out of it. So if the regular picking of the grapes at the ripest that you'll get is most probably going to be at 18 bricks. Brix is BRIX.
Really
you
low.
obviously know it, but just for your listeners, Brix is BRIX, which is the sugar level in the grapes. Now, if that ferments, let's just go simply in terms of a fermentation to alcohol conversation. If you convert 18 bricks sugar to alcohol, you're going to get about at best, a 10% alcohol wine, which we know for wine, that's not the standard. The standard is going to be your 14, 13 and a half, 14 and a half, 15. But aside, if it doesn't get the sugars, there's a lot of other things also that are not getting. So if it's not ripening in a sugar standpoint of view, it's not a ripening from a TA, a pH, color, all these aspects as well. So in order to make a drinkable wine in New York, and even by law, because at a certain point when it's so high in acid, by law you can't even sell it. So you have to bring down the acid. So in order to do that, you have to add either juice or water, sugar, in order to bring up those alcohols and make it a drinkable wine. So going back, it's a long-winded answer, but going back to making New York State wine, in order to make the Concords and the Burgundies and whatever we want to call the Takai and the Chablis at a 12% alcohol wine and a legal acid level, there's a lot of blending and a lot of with juice, wine, sugar that had to happen in order to make that. Now, obviously, with doing all that, the quality of the wine wasn't going to be the best quality. So you had to, again, compromise with sweetening the wine or doing something in that matter to make that drinkable wine. So that was what we lived with making in New York wines, and simply because that was the challenge, that was the, as an artist, you could say that those were the colors of paint given to you, dealt to you, in order to make your painting. And I think we've made the best what we could out of those. But the family, going back to the history of the family making great wines in Europe, the aspirations were always for the family to make great wine. So the family, when my uncle David Herzog joined the family business, and that's a whole long story on its own, he went through my grandfather's files, and he found that my grandfather, going back in the 60s, was trying to produce kosher wine in Italy. And he couldn't get the kosher crew, the hashgacha, the supervision, everybody who just couldn't get it all together, the people, the employees, to make it happen. And it was shelved. So when my uncle came in the late 70s, he actually found all the documents of everything, the files that my grandfather had in trying to make a better kosher wine. And he kind of took that mission on, and we produced, that was the first time when Bartonura was produced. So that was in the late 70s when the first Bartonura, I think it was actually 79, Suave and Barbera de Asti were produced, Asti Spumanti, all those were produced. And then from there, we actually tried making wine in France, kosher wine in France, which was also, I think, the first vintage of the Baron Rothschild was 1985, 86.
86.
86. So,
I actually have walked through the Asti facility as well. I was actually there. I was blown away. It is huge, and people think it's just grape juice or what have you. It's not. That is real
there's
wine,
a science there.
And there's an incredible science to being able to produce something so consistently.
Being in that point, the family had a mission to produce great quality kosher wine. And the great quality kosher wine was, being in New York, being in the industry, was California. That's where great kosher wine is going to be produced. And in 1985 was the first time that we produced Baron Herzog. So I typically tell people the mission for the family is to produce great kosher wine. And we started, like I said, in Italy, France, California, producing great kosher wine. So we started that in 1985. Interestingly enough, I think it's interesting for the story. In 1985, we produced 5 kosher wines. We produced a Baron Herzog Chenin Blanc, Baron Herzog White Zinfandel, Baron Herzog Chardonnay, Baron Herzog Cabernet, and the Baron Herzog Zinfandel, sorry. Yeah. Those were the 5 wines. And another interesting fact is that the first year that we produced the Baron Herzog wines, it was actually produced in a winery in the Christian Brothers winery. So these 4 the Jewish family was producing wine at the Christian Brothers. Winery in California, which is actually now it's the CIA Institute of Culinary Cooking. So it's actually an interesting history. But that's really, so in 1985 with California and then with France, it kind of became the mission of wherever there's great wines produced, we'll produce great kosher wines. So the mission started, like I said, in 1985. As the company grew and our demands grew and we needed more space and more tanks and more employees, and the other wineries were needing space, we were, as I like to say, we were the wandering Jews in the desert of California. So it wasn't 40 years, it was 20 years. But after 20 years, finally, my uncle David, the CEO of the company, said, you know what, it's finally time to build our own home. And that's when in 2004, we decided it was time to build and find a facility, find an area where to build, and we built our winery in Oxnard, California.
So it's exactly 20 years ago.
Yep.
Wow. What amazed me with that was that, you're always striving to make better wines in Oxnard, but it's not just making better wines. You've been so expansive across all the different vineyards. I don't think there's any other winery. Certainly not kosher, obviously, but I don't know that there's any other winery that produces across so many regions and so many terroirs in California itself.
Correct.
And you've got actually more than 8 regions that you're producing in across California, and it's within.
And there's many more
And
coming. There's many more exciting stuff
okay,
coming.
and that's amazing to me because in each region you're making wines that are just spectacular. It's really special.
Correct.
I
I
love it.
appreciate that. Thank you. In terms of all the different AVAs or appellations, American
Yes.
viticulture areas. So it starts. You went straight to terroir, but I'll go back a step and speak about the AVAs and speaking about all these different sub-appellations that you're speaking
Yep.
about. So when you're speaking about terroir, you're speaking about basically sub-appellations, and I think where we have shown that a lot is mostly in Napa. Right, so in Napa, we've done all these different single vineyards from Napa, or even in our special edition, limited editions, we've done Rutherford, and we've done Oaknoll, and we've done Oakville, and we've done Calistoga, Haystack. We could go all the different Stag's Leap, all these different exciting appellations. Now, and I think let me step back for a second, maybe. I think in France or in Israel, in all these regions, you look in wine regions, in the kosher world, there is kind of a standard of what people expect from that region. So when you drink a Bordeaux, you know what a Bordeaux is supposed to taste like, and you have enough wines that you could compare. Well, you're going to go to Pontacanet and to Gispours and to Las Combes. You have enough to understand what the standard is and where the wine falls into place. Same thing obviously is true for Israel. In California, I don't think that existed until recently. I think California Herzog was the leaders. Yes, you had Agafen, later on you had Covenant. Now you have a whole bunch of different ones. You have the Shira, the Heidu. But there hasn't necessarily been expectations. When you speak in the kosher world about Napa Valley, there's not an expectation of what Napa. All they could tell you is, I like the Napa Valley better than the Alexander Valley, or I like the Alexander Valley better than the Napa or the Chalk Hill.
Yeah, because that was their whole world.
That
was my whole world. In 1992, Chalk Hill was just absolutely crazy delicious.
Right.
Crazy delicious.
So exactly to your point, because this is what was available.
Yeah.
And that's what we got, and that's how we created in our mind, okay, buy different labels or buy different AVAs of what the standards are and what the expectations are. I think in Napa, we've done quite a good job bringing in different AVAs, which now we're going to be releasing a whole nother tier of mountain fruit of Napa. We know Valley Floor quite good. We've done good on Valley Floor, but I think we're going to do a whole nother level of mountain fruit of Napa, adding a whole bunch of different sub AVAs. But also, I'm doing that in Sonoma. And a lot of people, this is, I think, happens to be his inside. I don't want to say politics, but inside in the growing region itself, because Napa, everything is labeled as Napa, and then in Napa Valley, as you peel the onion, right, you have all these sub-appellations. You have the like I said, the Oaknoll, the Oakvilles, the Howe Mountains, the Calistoga, the Rutherfords, the Diamond Creek, the Mount Veeder, you can just Howe Mountain, Stag's Leap, all the different. But in Sonoma, it's not necessarily known that way. Right? When you look at Sonoma, you know Sonoma, and then you look at Russian River, you know Russian River, you know Alexander Valley, you know Chalk Hill. You don't know necessarily as part of the bigger AVA, and these are the sub-appellations. They're almost all stand alone. So one of the things that we're trying to do now, and one of the wines I know that you have tasted or you're waiting to taste, which is the Double Creek Chalk Hill, the Generation 8. But so as we've done in Napa and introduced a whole bunch of different sub-appellations in Napa, we're now also going to be doing on Sonoma.
Okay, so that's the direction you're going. Very cool.
Some surprise, right? Surprise. Look, I will say this. I'm going to say this here. I've been thinking it, but I've never said it aloud, and I'm going to say it aloud now. We will get to a point. I don't know how fast, but we will get there. We will get to a point where, from the point of kosher or non-kosher, or if a Baal Tshuva comes and says, I used to drink whatever, and this quality, and I had to, that for kosher wine, you will not give up anything of quality, of standard, of style, of flavor for drinking kosher wine.
From your mouth to God's ears. My dad was a wine drinker. We had a business that was in Southern California, and one of the insurance companies was the actual source of funding for, in the 70s, for many, many of the wineries. So my father became very close friends with people like Robert Mondavi and Stag's Leap and what have you. And I had a cellar in my house, and I used to be the eunuch who watched the harem because I wouldn't drink anything but kosher wines. But that's also why I started to collect things like the original Rothschild. I had cases of the Rothschild in 86. I remember going into the wine store up in Riverdale, Skyview. It was the place that you could actually buy cases of the early, the 1990s and what have you, chalk hills. And they had cases stacked to the ceiling, and that was my store, even though I lived in New Jersey. What I was going to say to you was that Stag's Leap was something that he always had. I always had it in my cellar, and it was something that I'd smelled, but I'd never, ever tasted. And when you came out with the Stag's Leap, I said, I have got to get bottles of this, and I've got to taste it. So it's an amazing thing for me as well, from a history.
Right. And to be all honest, I can't just take credit in terms of the Herzog family for just being so, call it adventurous, or willing to do the investment and going out. Obviously, we could speak about fruit prices and things like that when you start speaking about those sub-appellations and where they go. But it's also the consumer. So it's obviously coming from a world of, call it the White Zinfandels or call it the Kedem, coming from the world and educating themselves and learning and getting better and wanting the expectations and wanting to go and bring up that level of the wine. It had to be hand in hand with the producers and the customers as well. And
I want to also tell you that the Kedem grape juice, I live in Jerusalem. We buy Kedem grape juice because we have a lot of American seminary students coming inbound, and yeshiva and sem students. And as soon as they see the Kedem grape juice, they go, "Oh, thank God!" It brings them home, and they love it. So it's a big hit here in Israel. And that was another question: are all of those because of the Concord grapes made in New York, or is the Kedem grape juice?
All the Kedem grape juice is all made in the facility upstate New York, like we speak Marlboro, New York, north of Monroe, like you said.
Right.
Yeah, so all the grape juice because of the Concord. The Concord is, I remember when I was in Israel, and then obviously the Kedem grape juice and all that wasn't so popular in Israel. And I used to get from people, so actually my Rebbe always used to ask me if to get him Kedem, like he loved the Kedem wines and the Kedem grape juice. And one of the people that worked in the office actually learned in Yeshiva of Chok Hatam Sofer, which they do the kashrus, they do the hechsher as well, right? So they were actually bothered. They were actually bothered that the rabbi Rav Unger, actually his yahrzeit is by you tonight. As we speak, it's his yahrzeit. Wanted Kedem when he gave the kashrus and all these different wines, whether Benyamina, Carmel, he gave them, like they were all upset. Why is he asking you to get him grape juice and wine when we have all these ones that we give kashrus on? And they would tell me, you guys are adding certain things to it to give it that acid, that bitterness. There's chometz limon or mashu that you're putting into these grape juice to make that profile. It's not natural. It's not possible. And I used to argue with them all the time. No, that's the Concord. If you know anything about the New York State and about Concord, that is the Concord flavor. So that is, to be realistic, that is the reason why you're tasting and why it's so unique and so delicious is those Concord grapes.
Wow. Quick question while we're talking about, do you have a personal favorite among the varietals that you produce?
That's a real tough question, and I'm not going to answer no favorite child. I'm not going to go down that answer.
Okay.
But you know as good as I know that wine is not necessarily a thing that you have a favorite.
Yeah.
Because it always, and I have been saying this pairing food with wine or wine with food, not necessarily the same thing, but there's the idea of what you're eating, who your company is, what the weather is like. It's all that puts you in the mood. It's the same as a song. You don't always have the same songs. There's different. You're in the mood of you listen to something and you become in the mood, or you're in the mood of a certain song, a certain type of music. The wine is no different. Now I could tell you within Cab or within Pinot, I love Pinot and I love Cabs, I love Zinfandels, but it really has to be the right moment. And for instance, a lot of times I have guests by me, and so this is a rule that I will say bluntly. The rule is who my company is. If I have someone that really enjoys wine and understands wine, I'll let them go down to the cellar and pick whatever wine they want, because we're going to enjoy that bottle. And that's what the wine is supposed to be. It's supposed to be enjoyed amongst friends and just enjoying a great quality, sipping and talking and having great friends over and appreciating good wine. When I'm just going to be drinking myself, it's going to be a different type of wine, or it's just going to be people that, they're a good bottle of wine, but they don't have, like I could say, Simon, that love for that wine. Then it's going to be something else. So and that's could maybe be that's part of the mood. Right?
I agree with you 100%. And also, there's I might have a favorite, but then I haven't tasted this Double Creek yet, so I'm really looking forward to doing that with you as well. But one last question before, any varietals that have posed significant challenges to you?
So varietals, the 100%. There's different varietals that are prone to different diseases, that are prone to different characters. For sure, lots of them. I mean, you're going to speak about Petit Syrah, you're going to speak about Pinot, you're going to speak about Malbec, even the whites. You're going to speak certain Chenin Blanc. And every winemaker will tell you that the majority of the work really happens in the vineyard.
Yep.
I could say it's probably 75% happens. If everything is done right in the vineyard, it's way easier to make that exceptional, that great bottle of wine in the winery. But if you don't, then you're dealing with all these with all these issues, or with these what you're saying harder to make. But majority of these issues or problems or future problems could be mitigated in the vineyard. Again, except obviously the Hashem runs the world, and you're going to get a rain. You're going to get, but even with all that, the stuff in the vineyard depends what you do in the vineyard and how much control you have in the vineyard, and how much, a lot of times, funds or appetite of loss that will dictate that you could mitigate that damage or that issues.
I want to talk a little bit about the team that you have there, because I absolutely adored talking to Joe Hurliman. He was such a mensch, really, really special person, and it was an incredibly huge loss when he passed away. 100%. But you seem to have held the team together and grown the team, and continued to build it. Tell me a little bit about the team itself that does the winemaking.
Sure. So first of all, let's take a second and speak about Joe Hurliman. Actually, his first year, I'm going to say your side, but we all know Joe had a Yiddish neshama. He definitely had.
He was a mensch, total mensch.
He never wanted to admit it to me, but he definitely had some, coming from a Polish family, and I think his mother's maiden name was actually Pinkosowicz. So there's no question that he had Yiddish blood, the Yiddish neshama. And he's definitely has some merit because Klal Yisrael drank his wines and appreciated his wine. And he actually he was no other better word to describe Joe Hurliman as a mensch.
Yeah.
Really a mensch. And I have to say, even for me, when I came out there, you could have certain winemakers and have now a family member coming there and being there. It's not how he welcomed me and made sure for my success and routed for my success. That was something special. And he made great wine, and he was definitely an entrepreneur in that. And when the family had requests or ideas or stuff that they wanted to do, he was always a champion for it. So, Joe Hurliman of blessed memory. So now what we've done is actually we have a great team, and quite a bit of the team we have. I'll start down in the cellar. I mean, we have Surly, Levy, a few Levies and a few Mendels, but Zev. I think you remember back Zev.
Yes.
Yep. There. We have Alicia. We have new crew, a few more people that we brought in, winemaking team, and then obviously the big one, which is David Galzignato, our senior winemaker. Now, I'll say this actually. And this ties in what we're speaking about, what I started off speaking about, the AVAs, or bringing Napa to the pedestal, bringing that to the forefront into the kosher world, or Sonoma and the different sub-appellations. When Joe Hurliman was sick, and we all knew and we all spoke, including Joe Hurliman, of needing to find a new winemaker, which is going to be the future face of Herzog Wines. There was a dilemma, or there was the conversation in the family. What should we do? The one option is the easiest and the most simple option is obviously grow from within. The secondary option, which is not as easy but also much easier, is go to Israel, find the best winemaker you could to Israel, and bring him over to the United States. He knows kosher. He knows ingredients. He knows the marketplace. He knows the chagim. He knows the holidays. He knows when you need to do it. He just has to get used to new fruit. But other than that, he knows it's plug and play, right? The third option, which is the hardest and the most difficult, and which is basically bring a top winemaker out of Napa Valley, out of the world of wine, out of kosher. Get someone like that, convince him to go from the big world and to be a top winemaker in the world of Napa, in the world of non-kosher wines, to want to take a job in the kosher winery. And those were the conversations. In the family, we all decided this is the opportunity for us to go and to find someone that lives and breathes Napa, Sonoma, California, that knows every which vineyard, that knows basically, and it's not a joke, that knows Napa, Sonoma on the palm of the hand. Knows every vineyard, knows every grower, knows every winemaker. He's speaking from all these the big and prestigious different wineries. That's and so we all decided, the family decided that that's what we're setting out for. And I have to say, it wasn't an easy thing. And I'm sure at one point or another you'll have David Galzignato, the current winemaker, on. But David came from the Madavis from the world, from Charles Krug, from Provenance. He's worked and he's been in the world of wine. Again, he has played in what we call the creme de la creme of the world of wine. In France.
The major leagues.
In the major leagues. So we had to go out and convince a guy like that, like David, to want to come from that world and immerse himself to come to the kosher world. Now, it wasn't easy. I will say all of his friends, and he'll admit it to you, all of his friends made fun and are still making fun of him. So you went from being in the big pond with the top guys to being the number one winemaker in the kosher world, but it's still a very small pound of kosher. Right. And so it wasn't just as simple as, yes, the winery, the setup in the winery, like you said, an impressive winery. It was grapes, it was yeast, it was coopers, all these challenges. A winemaker coming from that league is looking to, he needs his tools, and he needs, like an artist. You're not going to bring an artist and just give him here's 2 paintbrushes and a pastel and a canvas and just go ahead. And you need the tools in order to to do what you expect from him, right? If you want him to deliver, you got to give him the tools. So I have to say it was equal. Both of us were so invested in doing this that he was invested in to come and to be the number one kosher winemaker. And we were invested to go ahead and invest and buy him the tools in order to be able to make that.
Wow.
And that goes from grapes to equipment in the winery to optical sorters to tanks to coopers to different yeasts across the spectrum. We had to go. Actually, I'll tell you this much: we hired him in August. It was the final day that we hired him. The second day on the job, we gave him a challenge that we want to produce the best kosher wine that exists. Go out, find the best vineyard, make the best bottle of wine. To which he came back after 2-3 days and says, I could do it. I could buy the grapes. I have a source for the grapes. But I need A, B, C, D, and E. Investment of millions of dollars in order to be able to do it. And we said, not a problem. We're going to go ahead and do that. Which I think that leads us into the Generation 8, into the different wines. We could say about the future wines that are coming out. We could throw that out there so we'll get an understanding a little bit of what we're talking about.
Should we try some?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I think we should.
So we've got.
Go ahead.
Which one should we start with? We've got two wines that we're tasting.
So since you spoke so highly and about your memories and everything about Stag's Leap.
Yeah.
I don't know if you tasted it already before or all you have is that aroma that you smell still as a child from your father's collection of Stag's Leap.
I was saving it for a special time, so it's sitting here and I haven't tasted it yet. So it's really, and it's wow. So this is the 2018. This is a generation. This is a Generation 9.
Generation 9 for the 9th generation that has joined the family.
Okay, that's what it was for. Okay.
So you saw Michael before. He has a son in the business. You know Nathan Yoichi. He has a son in the business. My other brother Eli has a son in the business. And my cousin Ari, I don't know if you met him before, also has. So there's now 4 of the 9th generation in the family business.
Wow. I'm just
going to give you a challenge before I speak about the wine. You're going to have to remember today, you don't do it often. You're going to make al agef and not al gafna because you're drinking California.
Yeah. No. Yep, it is. I know. I really enjoy saying gafna. I really enjoy saying gafna, to be honest.
You wouldn't be living there if you wouldn't. So the first thing I want to dive in, and again, if we're going to try to build and separate between the Napa and the Sonoma, that dense fruit, that smelling that lively cherry or dark blue fruit, I think that's one of the giveaways. So as an MW, anything like that, where you're going to have to just by smell, taste, and be able to describe the wine, what the varietal and where it comes from. The nose on this wine is going to be a giveaway for Napa.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You get that intense dark blue fruit, blueberry, currants, cherry.
This is so nicely balanced.
With these type of wines, you're expecting that bigger mouthfeel, that big profile, but yet almost that elegance to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're saying is the well balance, is the elegance.
Yep, it's the elegance to.
But that beautiful, 100%. The beautiful lingering finish, the deep fruit, dark concentration of all this is just beautiful wine. And I think there's a reason of why Stag's Leap was the wine that won the what was the competition against the French wine?
The Judgment of Paris. The color is also absolutely beautiful. This bottle is just perfect. It's just perfect color. Excellent. Incredible.
So you're drinking the 18. The color obviously is a little bit lighter already.
Mhm.
It's still obviously a dark and intense wine, but in terms of bottle age, that's already almost 6 years of age, or 4 years of bottle age. You're ready for that bottle of wine.
Yeah, but it's not.
It's not bricking or anything like
not
that.
at all. It's like a very young wine.
I'm gonna give myself a challenge, and I'm gonna give you a challenge.
Go ahead. Go.
The next time when I come to Israel, we're gonna drink some great aged wines in Israel by you, and the next
I'd
time
love it.
when you come to California, I'll open some aged bottles for you.
Okay. I would love it. I would absolutely love it.
Beautiful.
All right. This is lovely wine. I'm thankful to God for a lot of things. I'm very thankful for Yossi Horowitz because he gave me an excuse to get people together to drink kosher wines.
Chodesh Club, the world famous Chodesh Club.
This Rosh Chodesh Club thing is what made high-end wines drinkable, because they just sat in my cellar. There was nobody to drink them with except once in a blue moon. And this gave me a monthly challenge. It's a wonderful thing. So
I think the Wall Street Journal once had an article and a write-up about that, right? They wrote that everybody has that special wine that they're keeping for that special day. But a lot of times you're just holding on too long and that special day doesn't arrive, and the optimum time or the peak for that wine passes and you miss that special day. And I think they call it, I don't know when it is, or they have always once a year the calendar. It's that special day to open that special wine.
Right.
So we have Rosh Chodesh Club.
But the Rosh Chodesh Club absolutely satisfy that need. And there are so many incredible people around the world who are enjoying kosher wines now. It's just, whether it's in England or whether it's in all over the place. It's quite remarkable.
In California, I think they have actually 2 or 3 Chodesh clubs, different groups of Chevron.
Well, in Israel we have 3. In Israel we've got a Jerusalem, we've got a Bet Shemesh, and we've got one in Renana.
In California, I think it's a little different. You have the Hasidish one, you have the Litvish, and you have the Chabad one.
So in New York, it's like that. They've got the Hasidish one, and they've got the Syrian one with Ralph Medeb, and then they've got the regular one in Teaneck, New Jersey.
The Lakewood one, yeah.
It is. Lakewood one is also awesome. Crazy people. It's very special people. While we're in between tasting, and I want to taste this, I want to taste the new Generation 8, the Double Creek, because this is brand new. And actually, your video introduced it to me, and I said, I've got to get a bottle of this and try it in Israel. And I really want to put it up on the podcast. And I wanted to do it actually before Shavuot, because I actually got it before Shavuot, but it went through such an arduous travel with Yaakov Shakatovitz came from LA and he picked it up and he brought it to me, hand carried it. I was scared to open it up too soon because I didn't want to mess it up. I really wanted to give it a fair shot. So now it's been sitting for a while.
I'll tell you honestly, it's still too young.
It's way too young.
It's way too young. It's way too young. And we'll speak a lot when we get to taste, a lot about the whole story of this vineyard. But yeah, you're in for a treat.
Okay. So visiting Oxnard, what should people know? What should people, look at? I know the restaurant's incredible because I was there, but I'm sure you've done more with it. Is it a place to come to sit at a bar and taste wines as well, or do I have a reservation and come to eat in the restaurant, or how does it work?
Great question, and I'm happy that you're giving me the opportunity actually to speak about this. What we've done is we've done a little changes. So now actually you could get food in the tasting room at the bar. There's a bar menu. Okay. So you could get the opportunity actually not just taste wine and just kill your palate on 2 bottles of wine and not be able to move forward. There's actually a bar menu. So that's throughout the day, starting at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. There's no lunch in the restaurant, but there's the bar menu, the tapa menu that happens in the tasting room. So you have an opportunity to eat and taste wine along side by side, which is great. And then we did a new concept in the restaurant, which I think, and I have to actually thank part of the idea came. The visionary for this idea was Mike Gershkowitz from Mike's Bistro, of what we did in the nighttime menu. And he basically said, Joseph, you have a restaurant and a winery where you produce all the different wines. Why are you operating as a regular restaurant where people buy wine and food? Every dish should be a component to the wine that you could elevate and showcase the wine, food and wine, wine and food. But this should be an opportunity where people could come and try wines and try it in a setting that they wouldn't have the opportunity otherwise.
Brilliant. I didn't know you did that. That's brilliant.
So we basically took a concept and we went with that concept on steroids. And it's something that doesn't exist in the world. I don't even think out of kosher it doesn't, because you don't typically have restaurants and wineries. But we now do every dish incorporates wine in the dish. So as wine drinkers, we all know the phrase, you don't want to cook with wine that you wouldn't drink, right? But we all know in every restaurant kitchen, I don't know how many restaurant kitchens are going to hold that true, right? In our houses, maybe, because we'll be sipping while we cook as well. But in the restaurant kitchens, they ain't cooking with the wine that they're serving you to drink. Well, at Herzog or at terroirs, that is the anomaly. That's different. So we now, each dish, and whether it's going to be a fish dish or a chicken dish or a meat dish, there is a component in the vegetables and the sauce and the reductions of the wine in that dish, and then it's paired with that wine as well. So
unbelievable.
So you're getting to sit down, and you might be thinking of a Pinot Noir one way, or a Petit Syrah, or a Malbec, or a Cab, different Napa Cab or Alexander Valley. Think of it one way, but here you get the opportunity to taste a dish that is meant to pair with this wine, and all of a sudden it elevates everything. Your food is better, your wine is better, and all of a sudden wines that you would have never. A Malbec, you wouldn't have gone out and bought a Malbec because you don't like the spice, or you don't, and all of a sudden you had it in this environment that it was just that perfect wine and perfect food. And you go out and you buy a bottle, or you go to your home store and you buy a bottle and you drink that wine and introduce to something new because of that impression that it made. So that's the new change, and that's dinner. So the terroirs is open for dinner. Occasionally, we'd still do Sunday brunches or different stuff like that. Then, obviously, we have the wine club events that we do the pickup dinners and all like that, which is also obviously paired. But that's the idea. The idea is it's now a wine-incorporated restaurant into each of its dishes.
Brilliant. Really good. I love the idea. I really now I'm really psyched to come.
All right.
I'm really psyched to come.
Red carpet treatment. We'll roll the red carpet out for you.
Thank you. Let's talk about the Double Creek.
All right. So you have the bottle in front of you, I'm sure.
I do actually.
The Double
right
Creek
here.
Vineyard. Yep. The Double Creek Vineyard Chalk Hill. So, as I said before, there is the AVAs. Like we said, in Napa, we have all different AVAs that we'll come to expect from Napa. Or the sub-appellations, the single vineyard, which is Generation 8 Oak Knoll is a single vineyard. The Generation 9 is a single vineyard. Rutherford typically doesn't say, but these are, again, all these different. But you have microclimates within microclimates. You have Chalk Hill is an AVA. In our world, people only know Chalk Hill. They don't even know Wernicke Vineyard or Cabernet. They just know that bottle by Chalk Hill. Right?
Okay. Wow.
But if we go into the area and we go into different vineyards, it's a whole different world. So this is actually a vineyard we went into because Chalk Hill is limited. I mean, obviously everybody knows from supply. It's limited how much grapes, and there's a winery called Chalk Hill that basically consumes and owns the majority of the planted land over there. So in order to get more grapes, it's a difficult task. So we were out there looking desperately for more fruit. So we came upon this vineyard, which is some doctor built himself a beautiful house on the hills, and I think you saw a little bit of that on the video, and planted these 7 acres of vineyard on all different slopes around the house. And these, you're speaking about slopes, it's probably 30-degree slopes. where there's no tractors, there's nothing going up this. This is all manual labor, manual picking, everything done by hand. And it was almost this little own, not almost, it is this own microclimate based on how it's surrounded by all the mountains, and then the soil, the clay, the rock that made this vineyard. It was just special. From the moment where we in there, it was a special vineyard. We signed a long-term contract on that fruit without even having the history or anything on that fruit. And so this is the first vintage also for our new winemaker, for David Galzignato, which is 2021. And we actually had a demo that year on an optical sorter. I'm sure you know what that is. You've heard of that.
Sure.
So we had...
We have them here in Israel. We have some in Israel.
Yeah, you have some. Castel has one, Oregonus has.
Yeah. So
we actually demoed the piece of equipment that year, and we demoed it on this grapes. So what we did is we really went everything for the top tier, the best quality. A lot of times I pick certain projects that we speak about. Like, for instance, we just did a new planting in Lake County that I call these projects R&D. It's not necessarily about what my expectation is. I'll make a portion the way where it's supposed to go in a program that it's supposed to go, but we'll take a portion and forget about the dollars and cents and just do R&D. What is the best? What's the potential? It's almost like a bacher in yeshiva. What is the best potential for this bacher that he could become? And that's what we did here with this Double Creek.
It is so deep.
So it's Sonoma. So
purple.
First of all, again, let's speak a little bit, because we spoke about Napa, and I said about the difference. So Sonoma, obviously, when we smelled the stag's leap, we said Napa right away. Sonoma is obviously, it's the other side of the mountain, right? So it's more ocean breeze, oceanside, that side facing the ocean. Getting that
foggy
breeze,
mountains in the
getting
morning.
foggy mountains, getting a little bit cooler than Napa. So that alone is going to lend in differences, right, of the characteristics of the wine. So typically Sonoma is going to be more of your earthy wine, more leather, tobacco, coffee. It's going to lend itself away from the Napa, which is fruit concentrated, overly concentrated in fruit. You're going to get much more, a lot of times even more prone to green, more bell pepper, and typically in Sonoma. You're not going to have it in this wine, but in typically overall is one of the characteristics of Sonoma. You'll have that more. Oh, amen.
I take every opportunity these days to make a bracha.
So you also got to, from the get-go, first of all, understand that 2021 was much a riper year than the 2018. So, and we could spend most probably days speaking about expectations of vintage to vintage variation and what to expect and why they're so different. So when we compare those two wines, we obviously have to take in consideration 2018 versus 2021.
This is much, much more leather.
Right? You get the leather, you get that finish, you get that. I don't know why I want to say this, but I'm saying almost like even a nutmeg. You're getting...
Yep.
But that finish on your mouthfeel, definitely you get that leather, you get the tobacco. Now, way too young to be drunk.
I know.
But I definitely would call
criminal,
it... Could I call it a beast?
It is. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. And and actually, there's a bunch of us tasting this tomorrow in Jerusalem. A small group that's getting together. We wanted to taste this. We also wanted to taste, crazily enough, there's Ramat Negev wine that just got a Decanter 97 award, and was awarded 97. So we all of a sudden, like with a rating like that, wait a second, bring that back on. I want to taste that again, compare it.
Exactly.
So we're tasting that, but we're also tasting these two bottles at the same time, because they will have had some air for a while.
No, there's no question about what's happening. The transformation of the wines coming out of Israel is just mind blowing.
There's a lot of incredibly creative winemakers here, and I'm so blessed. I came 8 years ago. I mean, I've been coming back and forth to Israel for years and years and years. The explosion of kosher wines since the 90s is crazy. Aaron Pick did a podcast with me a week ago, and he spoke about the Judean Hills and how literally in the early 90s there was nothing there. They had orchards. There was no vines left. And since then, now something like 98% of the agriculture in the Judean Hills is wine.
It's wine.
In such a short period of time.
When I speak to non-kosher people in the industry or anything, and I want to speak about kosher wine, I typically say, we have historical, speaking about R&D, right? Everybody's busy with R&D and then and all the different, I said, in terms of the wine industry, we have the longest history of winemaking, a documented history, right? Like you could go back to Noah coming out of the Teva, but going back before, going in the Beis HaMikdash, the wine that was poured in the Beis HaMikdash is the best of the best, free run, no added, like high alcohol, that's what it was. And
can you talk about future wines in the portfolio?
Sure.
Without giving away stuff?
No, we can give away. They're going to come out for Rosh Hashanah. I think we're close enough that we could start speaking about it. So we're actually we're actually releasing a new. So the challenge, I told you about the challenge that we gave to the winemaker. So we obviously, what is that challenge? What is that wines? What are the vineyards and so forth? And I think you're going to appreciate this. This is going to be the first we'll put this information out. But knowing your background in Napa, like you said, Stag's Leap, you'll find this fascinating. So with that challenge, we decided to come out with a new tier, which is going to be the top of the top high-end tier. And the brand actually for that is going to be called Yesod.
Yesod. Wow.
Yesod Sheba Yesod.
Okay.
And the idea actually is speaking to and having conversation with a new winemaker, right? With Galzignato, and speaking about Herzog and speaking about all these different things. It was like, how about this? How about this? It came to a point where I said, we stopped and said, look, we are the Herzog family. My father was a Holocaust survivor. My grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. They have been 5 generations beforehand in Europe going through World War I, going through communism, going through all of that suffering, and coming to the United States, building back up to where we are. We are proud of who we are. We're proud of where we come from. We are not coming and reinventing the wheel or doing anything. We're building on the cornerstones of what our parents and grandparents have laid before us. That's who we are. We're proud of that. That's who we are. And he was like, wow, what's that name? What does that, what's the cornerstone? The idea was foundations. We're building on the foundations. And then we could, what name for foundation? The idea, Yesod.
Yeah.
And Yesod, obviously, Sod is wine, and we could go into the whole, all of that. But the plain and simple, it was about Yesod. We are proud from a Jewish state point where we come from, our parents being the Orthodox family in the business, what we're doing, we're proud of. We're not running. You'll find no Herzog that will be trying to run away from who we are, where we come from. We couldn't be any prouder. And that's the idea. So what we did is, and I'll send you a picture. We did Yesod, but the bottle itself is a cartouche. So it's the glass bottle which is actually a bottle that we have in the office. I'm sure you've seen it when you were in Oxnard on the wall. There's that Jacob Herzog Piva bottle of Verba of 1848.
Yeah,
Bottle
yes, absolutely. With the glass, it's glass pressed.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we've brought
Molded.
that's what we redid.
Wow.
We did the custom glass bottle to have that J. Herzog Verba of 1848, and the label doesn't say Herzog. The Herzog is only on the glass. It's Yesod. Stands on its own. Yesod. And the first year we did 3 vineyards. The first vineyard is a sub-appellation vineyard, Pritchard Hill.
Wow.
So you're speaking about So there's
Crazy.
a Kosher Pritchard Hill 2021 Cabernet Sauvignon coming to the industry. That has the first in history. There's never been one. So that's
crazy.
That
is unbelievable.
Right?
Yep.
Pritchard Hill is Lahavdil El of $5. When you're speaking about Pritchard Hill, you're speaking about Kodesh HaKadoshim of Napa Valley, of California, of what it is.
Wow.
So that's Pritchard Hill is number 1. Number 2 is Atlas Peak.
Atlas Peak. Okay.
Atlas Peak. Number 3 is actually a Pattis. So from Pattis, we took some of the Clone 6, and it kind of, like I said, we did the R&D of what the best, and we took a total of just 4 barrels of the best, put into. David went crazy with barrels. We have certain barrels, and that I'm not going to put out the names, that were the only ones in the state of California. Between all the wineries, and I don't have to tell you what that means, specialty barrels that were the only ones in California to have those barrels that those wines went into. So that's 3 of them. One of them that didn't make it, but we'll make it the next year again. In order to make those 3 wines, there have been a lot of other appellations that we made that didn't make it into this. But in the future, you'll have Hall Mountain, you'll have a whole bunch of Diamond, you'll have a whole bunch of others coming into this category, into this level of wine cup.
You're trying to make everything accessible to me. That's wonderful. I love this.
You appreciate it more than anybody else could appreciate it. Anybody living the world of being able to drink those wines, and when they speak about being about Shuva and giving up certain foods and giving up certain wines, this is real. Someone that has drank Stag's Leap or Hall Mountain or Pritchard Hill, someone that comes from that world and now comes to the world of kosher, they have this yearning. They have this. They're missing something. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is, like I said, there will be a time, and I don't know how fast, but it will be a time that kosher wine, you will not have anything less in the kosher world than not in the kosher world.
Amazing. Awesome. So you're in New York now?
I'm in Bayonne, New Jersey.
You're in Bayonne. I meant Bayonne.
And I'm going to be heading back to LA. My father's yard side was on Tuesday. So I came in and then business meetings, and then I'll back to LA. So that's in terms of the wine. I know one of the questions you wanted to ask vineyards. I don't know if we have the time, but that's again a whole nother impressive story of what we're doing in terms of vineyards. You'll see. I don't know if you had yet the Lake County, the 2021 Lake County.
I didn't have it yet, but I've seen it. Yes,
that's another bottle of wine that you need to put yourself and get to.
Okay,
we've planted a vineyard over there, which is just breathtaking. I mean, it's just really amazing. You'll be up, and anybody that comes up and sees that vineyard, you cannot go away without crying on that vineyard. It's just so spectacular.
You know, my introduction to Kedem was when I was, I think, 16 years old. I went to a Farbrengen in Chabad, and they had, the only thing they drank was Kedem wine. Yeah, and it was just like crazy. I'd never seen it before. I'd never tasted it before. It was like unbelievable.
But that goes back to the story. I think putting stuff in perspective of what Kedem, where that sweet, syrupy wine comes from, and why.
Yeah,
I think go back to Manischewitz, where the Jews immigrate to. I think it's an interesting perspective for people to appreciate of why and where we've come today.
It was a purpose. You were fulfilling a need that the community had at that time to be able to make brachot. And I'll be honest, I think the biggest legacy you have is how many millions of brachot have people made over your wine? It's an unbelievable legacy, Joseph. It's an unbelievable legacy.
And it's more than a legacy, as I told you. When I interview any mashgiach, any kosher employee in the cellar, I tell them this. I said it's the legacy, but more than that, it's the legacy, but it's the responsibility.
Yeah. No, it has a responsibility.
And the responsibility scares me, because that's the responsibility of people drinking kosher wine, relying on you to deliver their highest standard of kosher.
Right. Thank you very much for being on the Kosher Terroir and spending so much time with me. I know you're very busy these days, and especially you're going to run back to LA. So thank you very much.
No problem. We'll make sure when I come to Israel, which I need to be there. I'm scheduled to be there soon, and I have kids there as well. So hope to be there soon, and hope to do some tasting and maybe even some touring with you.
This is Simon Jacob again, your host of today's episode of the Kosher Terroir. I have a personal request. No matter where you are or where you live, please take a moment to pray for our soldiers' safety and the safe and rapid return of our hostages. Please subscribe via your podcast provider to be informed of our new episodes as they are released. If you're new to the Kosher Terroir, please check out our many past episodes. And thank you for listening to the Kosher Terroir.